The Science of Interstellar by Kip Thorne. Kip Thorne is a Nobel Prize winning physicist who is at the center of getting Interstellar made. I didn't realize this before I read the book, but it was actually Kip Thorne's idea. He helped develop the initial story and he was with it all the way through the whole process of getting the movie made. It's interesting that at one point Steven Spielberg was attached to direct, and then he had to drop out, and then Christopher Nolan came on, his brother came on. So it was actually a winding path. I just assumed that Interstellar was the next Christopher Nolan movie that he just pulled out of his brain like he does with his other movies. This one was a little different. So Kip Thorne's initial idea was how he wanted to make a Hollywood movie that was scientifically accurate, or at least that the ideas that it talked about were reasonable scientific concepts, as opposed to just inventing stuff out of nowhere. The funny thing about Interstellar is there's a large group of people that say just because it's in a movie, it doesn't mean that it's scientifically accurate. So they just assume that nothing in the movie is accurate, when it's funny, like this movie is, the whole point of it is the opposite of that. Like, here are some scientific principles in movie form. So about the movie Interstellar, I really liked it. I've seen it many times, and I especially did like the scientific element of it. Just the thought experiment that the whole movie is, I thought was really fun. And so this book was perfect for me because I'm interested in the science behind all of it and how feasible these things really are and how much they're kind of taking a guess at what the science is versus this is actually what the science is. For each of these scientific principles, he says it's either settled science, it is reasonably based in science, or if it is just speculative. And I think it does a good job of explaining a lot of these principles for someone who is not a scientist. He says that that's his target audience, just someone who's interested in science, which is about my level. So it was perfect for me. He has a lot of visuals and graphs to kind of talk the reader through some of the more complicated aspects of it, which are really helpful. So in the first chapter of the book, he talks about how the movie was made and the whole backstory of the movie and some of his biography. So it's good to have that there. And then he gets right into what's the science, the meat of the movie in his mind. So in the book, I love his explanation of wormholes. Every movie does that thing where you fold a piece of paper in half and you explain, you poke the pencil through, and there it's like you're going from this point to this point, and you don't have to cover the distance in between. Like, all the movies do that, but I love it in Interstellar, and he goes through it more in detail in the book, like how a wormhole is actually a sphere and how that works and how light functions within that sphere. Like, that was really cool to see. That was eye-opening. And I also loved how he explains black holes, how the light of the black holes, how it bends around, so that you really get the sense that if you had a camera and you were pointing it at a black hole, what you see in the movie is what you'd actually see if you were there. And this book made me appreciate a lot of the shots that they have in the movie that maybe they're only up for like 3 or 4 seconds, but he talks about how much effort went into going through all the math and going through all the equations and doing the lighting and the effects, and this guy saying like, yep, that's what it would look like. It was really fun to watch the movie after reading this book, because then it's like you get this sense of realism that's pretty cool. There can always be elements that are wrong, but it's cool to think like this is our best guess for what this would actually look like, what this would actually feel like. And I thought the whole time relativity thing, I know a lot of people have issue with that. That just makes sense to me, and he puts that in the realm of solid science, just like Newtonian gravity. We just put it into the equation, and this is how it comes out. Even though it's weird to think, like, if you travel at almost the speed of light, of how much time's going to be slower for you than someone else. It's kind of mind-bending, but it for some reason it makes enough sense to me that I'm happy to go along with it. There are a couple other things that I am still struggling with. Number one, I don't understand the blight, how you can have all the scientists of the world not being able to make corn. A whole species just going extinct. I really still can't wrap my head around that. He explains it in the book that he had meetings with the top botanists, top scientists of that field, and they said, yeah, maybe that could happen. And so he's kind of deferring to their expertise. I still don't really get that part. I also don't really get the thing with the Tesseract. That one, maybe it'll have to take more time of being exposed to how it works with the four-dimensional space and three-dimensional in a three-dimensional area. Just a little over my head. Maybe I'll just have to read it 10 more times, and then it'll start clicking with me or something. But that was a uphill battle. And of course, I always have an issue with time travel stories, which he kind of talks about in this book, but I don't think he gets at the central problem to me, is how someone from the future can go back to give information that will save the human race so you can have the civilization in the future. Like that causal loop just doesn't make any sense to me. The way that a friend suggested that it could possibly work was Cooper didn't actually save the human race. The human race was saved and the future beings existed anyway, but they went back and they improved the method in some way. Then I can live with that a little more than them going back so that he could save the human race, because otherwise the human race is done for. Personally, I don't think backwards time travel is possible anyway, but if you're going to put it in movies, I like for it at least to make sense. Anyway, I love this book. I thought it was a lot of fun to read, very eye-opening, and just it was loaded with notes, and I'm really tempted to go and do some of his further reading, because he breaks it down beautifully into many pages of references at the end of the book. So if I do reviews of science-y books in the future, it might be because I read this book. Overall, I'm going to give this book 4.5 stars.